The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, welcome to Ecodomus Digital Twin via BIM, CDE, IoT, PIM, and AIM. Welcome to the presentation and thanks for your attendance today. I'm Bill King, Project Development Vice President at Ecodomus, and Igor Starkov, co-founder and CEO of Ecodomus, will be leading the presentation. A few little items to address up front. Again, thanks for everybody for attending the webinar, and a lot of great interest. Please put any of your questions on the menu to the right, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. We'll be recording the presentation also today, and we'll be following up shortly after the presentation with any other specific questions you may have, as well as link to the recording. So, further ado, I'd like to turn today's digital twin via BIM over to Ecodomus, over to Igor Starkov. Igor, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, everyone. So we have lots of slides today. I hope we're going to fit into 1 hour, but yeah, we'll try to answer your questions as well. So please submit your questions. First, let's look at the agenda for today's webinar. I will introduce Ecodomus to those who haven't heard about us before. We will look at the definition of what digital twin is and what BIM CDE is, what is common data environment and why is it critical. Look at some use cases. Then we'll turn over to standards for project information models, PIM, and asset information models, and why quality control is so important for developing those models. Then we also have heard a lot over the past years about the organizations that want to support both traditional 2D-based workflows, but at the same time slowly migrate to BIM. So we'll explain how our solution can help with that. A lot of the conversations right now are going on about the single source of truth and integration of BIM with various other technologies, databases, software applications. So we will look at how BIM can be integrated with project management, computerized maintenance management systems, computer-aided facility management, enterprise resource planning, as well as the hardware technologies. Popular topic is also mobile BIM, deployment of BIM technology in the field. So we'll show you some of the examples of how can it be done on tablets and smartphones, what workflows can be covered. And one of the important topics of today's presentation is integration with Internet of Things, because that's what digital twin is about, BIM and IoT, and how this can be helping with optimizing building performance. And at the end, one of the last two slides will be about point clouds, laser scanning, and using that in combination with BIM. And then we'll go into questions and answers. So first about Ecodomus. We've been around for 8-9 years. Mitch Borislavsky and I co-founded this company back in 2009, 2010. And we were the first to take BIM to FM. At that point, digital twin was not yet a name. So we used the term BIM to FM or lifecycle BIM. And for many years, we were the only company who was doing that. Obviously, the market is changing. There are more companies coming into play. But we were able to gather the best early adopters, best clients in the several vertical industries. We work extensively with the U.S. government, GSA, Federal Reserve, Pentagon, Army, DHS, VA, etc., as well as the commercial clients, Google, Disney, etc. Universities, higher education clients, Harvard, USC, Stanford. And so every vertical industry, by the way, it had a different entry point. So for example, we recently started working with the water infrastructure facility, but first years we never heard from them. A couple of years ago, we started working with industrial clients also for the first time. Airports is now one of the fastest growing sub-industry for us. So the technology, the software has been developed all these years. It's a great technology platform right now, but even more important is the experience we acquired from all of these clients. Right? I'm not showing the logos of the architectural engineering construction companies who are our partners, because we partner with them quite a lot. Companies like Atkins, AECOM, Parsons, Jacobs, etc., on delivering these solutions to the end users. Right? So we are good friends with them. We have complementary technology to their services. And so if you are an AEC firm, reach out to us and we'll explain how we can help you out. After this brief intro to Ecodomus, wanted to move on to the what is digital twin. I took this from the Wikipedia page that describes digital twin as the digital replica of physical assets, but also the processes, people, places, systems, devices. And an important component of it is the integration with Internet of Things. So just most of the people here on the call know what BIM stands for, right? So I think the easy to use formula would be digital twin is BIM plus IoT. I didn't come up with that. It's just, I think it's easy to imagine it like this, right? I also put in here a couple of slides from, I think, Deloitte and IBM, how they see what digital twin is. There are some other definitions, doesn't really matter. It is a virtual copy, virtual representation that gives you some information about what's going on with the actual physical structure, right? And as an example, I will show you the digital twin for one of our clients. It's a Sydney Opera House. I assume most of you guys know this building. So here within Ecodomus, we will just show how the guys are using it. It's taken from the presentation Opera House guys did themselves at the recent Build conference in Australia. All right, so here's the model. So the user is looking for the space G534A. It finds some systems related to that space, finds a few spaces that have G534A in its name. So here's that corridor. Now we look at all of the assets that belong to that corridor. We look at the attributes of that space. We look at the documents that are associated with that space, and we look at the issues or work orders associated with that space. All right, so we have a lot of different information about it. And so let's say we want to move in, zoom in here, right? We remove the semi-transparency to look at the details a bit more. Here I selected a lighting fixture and look at the lighting fixture properties. All of these properties have been extracted from the Revit model that the Opera House maintains. So I look at its attributes, I see at the documents that are linked to that lighting fixture. So I pull up the old, as you see, like 50-year-old drawing for this lighting schema. And from here on, I can also navigate, go around, and I noticed that there is some tag associated with some box here. So what is going on here? I select this box and I see that there's an open issue, right? So what kind of issue? There's a broken handle for this box. All right, so we will, maybe handle it better next time. Now I walk down this corridor. We are underground right now, right? It's below that top building. We can go to the chiller room here. Most of you guys have seen chiller rooms like that before. Okay, so this is just now we go into the stage, right? Turn on the layer with the chairs. We can review what the chairs are, or just walk this down this corridor and going back outside. All right, so this is what BIM provided the Opera House. And now we can just take as an example one of the rooms here and navigate within this room and look at some of the objects. So I see here there's a box. What is it? It's the secondary heating water pump, right? And I believe I have some data linked to it from the sensors. So I have some demo data sets from my sensors associated with docks, right? So I can review how they've been performing these sensors. So the data points can be linked to any object within the model. Okay, so that's how we are looking. And I'll talk about some other applications that Opera House is using where we will talk about integrations. But this is just an example of a digital twin as we can see it can be used. Why would we need it, right? Why would anybody need it? there are lots of different use cases that can be applied and bring the benefit to the end user. Here, as a case study, I took some article I saw online about the London airport. I don't remember which one, but they had a power supply issue. Something happened with the electrical system. It failed. It crashed their servers. Obviously, nobody knew exactly what happened because 99.9% of people have their electrical systems defined as the piece of paper, like here on the drawing, right? What can we do with it? We can actually build a schema where the elements are still represented in 2D diagram that is easy to understand for the traditional mechanical engineers or electrical engineers, but this schema is linked to the BIM object. So I can click here on this panel board and it will take me to the panel board's asset page where I can review its in 3D BIM, or I can see its real-time data points, or I can just embed values from the sensors that are linked in real time to the IoT BAS sensors, right? Or another use case that happened in Moscow airport, where they had a small fire in the baggage sector in a small room, but the smoke from it got into the main terminal, and they had to shut down the terminal for the whole day. So obviously the losses from just one day of 50 flights canceled could have covered the whole BIM and GIS and sensors implementation for the whole airport, right? What we could have done, we could have identified which are the dampers that they automatically need to close, or they need to close it manually by connecting the sensors and the BIM, right? Another use case related to the client we had in the healthcare space, what they did is they analyzed the time taken that they spent on, let's say, major plumbing leak, if it's happened, or on plant utility shutdown. The way to do that using the BIM and IoT and GIS and some other technologies integrated significantly less than the time they are spending right now. So after quite extensive calculations, they have identified how much totally they can save in money, but even more important, the savings on the impact for the healthcare organization or some critical facilities like data centers. It's not about the cost of the engineer, it's about every minute costs tens of thousands of dollars, right? So, so this kind of analysis and research shows the benefits for utilization of the technology like that. And it's not just for the buildings, right? So here are some other examples of digital twins. You can do that for the oil and gas refinery. You can use it like for bridges and highways. You can use it for industrial facilities like factories, process plants, wastewater treatment plants. So all different kinds of structures. For the software, it doesn't really matter whether you deal with a kindergarten or a nuclear power plant. It's just a matter of scale, right? So at least for our software. Other benefits and ROI analysis, you guys can read. It's all available online publicly. You can buy books like BIM for Facility Managers, or download this report from PwC. This is a pretty fresh report from this year, from March of 2018, published in the UK, and it has lots of good numbers. I like it because it really shows the value of BIM for the life cycle, that it's about 4 times more money you save in operations than during the design and construction, even though everybody who talks about BIM primarily talks about design and construction BIM. Or the older reports from ENR, still useful. So what is CDE now, right? We discussed that digital twin is great, but how to get it, right? To get it, you need to have an environment where you would assemble all of the information related to this model, right? And you connect it to the sensors and everything else. So CDE, Common Data Environment, is well known in UK and Europe because it's a part of the PAS 1192 standards, but it's not that well known in the United States and some other parts of the world. Right. So, so CDE is a central repository where all of the facility information is housed. Contents can be not just limited to the assets, but also include the documentation, graphical models, and pretty much everything. Right. So how Ecodomus is CDE, right? So what do? We actually participate in all of the phases. We are a life cycle CDE. Now there's a lot of CDEs done that exist for projects, right? So as soon as the project starts and finishes, that's all they do. Our CDE is life cycle. So we do participate in the design stages where we assemble the data, collect it, validate the data, and prepare it to hand it over to construction. In construction, pretty much the same. We check the model for availability of the information relevant to construction, visualize it, enable collecting information in the field, and then prepare it to be passed over to the owners. Owners utilize that information for the use cases like I showed you earlier, or for a couple of dozen of other use cases. We can have a separate webinar just about the use cases. And then what is important that few people talk about is how the owners help to pass this information to the new design and construction team so they can continue dealing with facility model for the renovation projects. How they deal it, how do they supposed to deal with that, right? So the facility model is what you use for digital twin. Facility model is not just the result of one project, it's all of the projects that you have, right? Typically, it's created based on the record model, and the record model is based on the design model updated to construction as built conditions and verified. A lot of people in this industry call it LOD 500 or level of development 500, which is the level 300 verified using LOD 400 to get the record model. Some of our clients, I would say the most advanced clients, are able to not just build one model, but to maintain it throughout the life of the building. So as you see in this example, using native Revit capability that everybody can use, by the way. These clients, specifically Howard Hughes Medical, have been able to maintain all of their existing and past projects as well in the single model. So they can always go back and review, when did we change this piece? Oh, that was the 2007 transgenic mouse wet stamp laboratory. That's how this information changed, right? So they have the complete history of the building, and imagine the value of the building where you know everything that happened, right? It's the same as when you get a car and the seller gives you all of the oil change documentation and everything is clear what was going on. You will get maybe 5-10% extra to add to the price of the car, right? With buildings, as if nobody cares about it, right? So definitely is valuable to have the historical information about it. It definitely increases the cost of the building, the price, the resale price. Here's the same facility. One interesting fact here is that this model was developed for the existing building. It was not built from BIM from scratch. This was done over a period of 2-3 years. They didn't rush it. It was a background activity for the client, but they were building this model as they had time, as we were helping them with it. So it's a complex building, as you can see, curvy. I don't think there was a single 90-degree angle here, but all of them pretty, very highly accurate, and all of the systems have been connected. So what we're doing right now is connecting all of these VAV boxes, data that was calculated in Revit as supposed to run, right? We're linking it to Siemens Apogee BAS, and now we are seeing how it's supposed to run versus how it's actually running right now. So the end user can analyze what they need to do with it, right? What kind of standards exist for all of this work, right? We showed you the benefits and how it's supposed to be built. The standards that we like are primarily based on the UK 1192 standards. That's where the definitions for asset information requirements come from, asset information model, project information model, etc. US National BIM standard, I would say it's okay, but nobody's following it. I know because I was part of creating it. It's a bunch of volunteers, spent some time, did it, but obviously we didn't have a significant financial support that British guys had. So what typically is important when you develop these information models? What kind of requirements? You need to define the asset types that are relevant to your use cases, right? What kind of attributes you want to collect? What kind of document categories you have? How you're going to be collecting this data? How you can be preparing? When this data is going to be collected? Not obviously, we don't want to do this at the last minute, right? We want to do it throughout the whole thing in order to establish the quality control properly. Who is going to be collecting this data, right? It's not just, oh, that BIM guy in the corner, he needs to do it all. It's impossible, right? If you need to collect the project information model correctly, then you need to have a lot of people involved, all right? The best way to enter data is at the point of origination. If it's the architectural data, it needs to be entered by architects. If the field data, it needs to be entered by the field guys, right? Not just one single BIM guy who will do it. And where does the data be collected? Everybody likes Excel. Well, of course, Excel is free, right? But you spend more time and it's becoming more costly in the end than using a professional dedicated software for that. So I will definitely recommend for those of you who haven't seen the UK standards to review what the asset information requirements are, AIM, PIM, and how they are all related, right? Now let me show you some examples of how this data is all being collected. First of all, yes, this schema is what you probably have seen before. This wedge schema is BIM level 2. Right now, as been mandated in the UK, everybody talks about level 3, but it hasn't been formalized yet. So where we are right now is where the red line here is everybody is more or less comfortable with level 2, but don't know what to do with level 3. Level 3 is actually going to be a pretty interesting thing. It's going to be it's looked at as an integrated web services BIM hub, where all of the applications talk to each other in real time using web services. We were doing this from the beginning, so using web services and doing the integrations and collecting all of the data. That's why we believe this is pretty much doable even now without waiting for the BIM level 3 to be formalized. So this is a good schema to show the PIM, project information model, and asset information model, right? So it starts in design, goes through construction, into handover, and then into operation maintenance, and then starts again, right? The good thing about the standards, the ISO standard was just approved, I believe, in December of 2018 for ISO 19650-1 and -2. Two of the sub sections of the standard have been approved. This third one, 19650-3, is now under development. So 19650 is about the handover, and 19650-3 is about operational use. The standard, the ISO standard, is based on the UK standard, so it's pretty much the same as 1192. It's just internationalized. So if you are familiar with 1192, it's going to be easy for you to move to ISO 19650. So yeah, so these standards are important because that's how the whole world is going to be doing the BIM and preparing the digital twins. So even if you're not based in the UK, I would suggest you guys look at it in more details. We like open standards because we were involved with them for a while. Some of you know that we were the first COBie certified middleware, and we were promoting COBie quite actively. We still promote it. It's just one of the toolkits that we work with. What I would suggest also to think about is what's happening on most of the projects versus how it's supposed to do, right? So I showed you the examples of good digital twins, but unfortunately that's not the reality, right? So reality is what we get on average so-called BIM projects, they are not really about information modeling. They are all just about 2D deliverables, really bad naming conventions, properties are missing, systems, nobody really seems to be interested in connecting systems, the duplicate assets, surface overlaps, etc. So we get really bad models a lot. And sometimes we spend months, if not years, to clean them up. So what we suggest is before you start modeling, establish proper requirements, establish systems matrix, establish naming conventions, define all of the attributes, define the QC procedures, because otherwise all of these standards don't really mean a thing, right? What we see that it's not just because everybody is lazy, it's just because a lot of times it's because the owners didn't specify anything. There is no requirements. When they don't ask for anything, then the contractors and architects don't know what to provide, right? The other thing is, even if you use an advanced authoring environment like Revit or CAD or Bentley, quite often you are not using it to full capacity. You still continue to draft in it, because if the final result needs to be produced in the 2D drawing, then why do I care about the systems, let's say, right? The good thing about the standards, especially UK standards, is that there's new types of job descriptions are being introduced, like information managers. So it's not just the clash coordination guy like in the past, right? There are new types of employees that are focusing on the quality of the information managers. So we suggest to think about having these information managers, which is a cross-discipline position. So they need to understand not just what the BIM looks like, but they also need to understand what the other applications involved, what their data structures look like, project management solutions, CMMS and CAP and other solutions, right? Again, think about the tools you're going to be using. Obviously, if you use Excel, you're going to be limiting what Excel can do for you. Schedule delays. I always suggest to link the data collection activity to your construction schedule. Very few people do that. They have, when we need to deliver that at substantial completion, all right, we will do it maybe a month before it's supposed to be over. Or even after the fact. Sometimes they say, we have some clients say, look, my as-builds will be ready a month or two after the project is over. Then that's when we will start thinking about what we're going to give to the FM guys, right? So obviously it's going to delay it by a year, because BIM definitely helps with data collection and extraction, but it also introduces the complexity to the process. So when the COBie was introduced first, I remember we were doing presentation, everybody was saying, yeah, you know what, because now we can collect data, we can package it faster, and instead of a year, which typically takes to hand it over to the owner, it may take only a few minutes. The challenge is those few minutes is only the import. Collection of the data is still going to take a lot of time. And now, because it's a BIM-driven project, people expect more than they expected in the past. In the past, you just only, maybe collect basic information about chillers, boilers, and that would be fine, right? Now everybody wants everything, because I do see that in BIM, so I want it, right? So how can we help? We can help with the performing automatic quality control for the asset information requirements. And here's how we can do that. This is a sample asset information requirements from the US Department of Veterans Affairs. I was participating in developing them a few years ago. You see here the list of asset types that the client, the owner wants. And here we see the list of fields that the client wants to collect, right, for those asset types. Within Ecodomus, we can actually establish the similar schema. We can define the structure of the disciplines and categories required, and we can define the list of the fields that the customer cares about. What are the standard naming for those fields, right? And then we can build a structure where we map required fields to required categories. Let's say for pumps, we need this field. For valves, we need this field. And these fields will be shown on the interface when you collect that data. Let's say I have extracted data from a model. I see my ball valve. I see the generic fields needed, and I see valve-specific fields needed. So I'm not looking at 150 different Revit BIM object files that have been from the BIM library and figuring out which ones I need to populate, which I don't. Then we can define the requirements for different stages. Let's say for the as-built stage, we specify that for pumps, we need these fields as mandatory, and for valves, we need some other fields mandatory, right? We can also establish the ranges of acceptable values, lists of acceptable options, or some other values predefined within the fields. We can also define what documents are needed for different types of equipment. Right? So all of it can be set up in the configuration. And then we run our quality control, and we understand what is it that we're missing, right? So let's say here in this specific example, we see that our valve is missing these 3 fields and those 2 documents. It's easy to fix. You can select your documents and just drag them into the application here, and it will upload those documents, and the documents will not be also missing. So it's not like in Solibri where you need to republish the IFC file, then somebody fixes the original model, then republishes the file, then somebody back and forth. The same system used for both data collection and for quality control. Okay. The other thing that I do like is building custom saved queries, or we call them filters. You can define any criteria for any attribute for any type of your entity within the model. Let's say for systems, for types, for components, for spaces, you can use the standard attributes to build formulas and save those formulas. Let's say your doors need to start with DR dash and then some number. That's just formula that developed and saved, and everybody can reuse it. Here's an example how we can do that. Let's say we have here a bunch of various filters, right? The first filter I will open called VAVs that cost more than $200. So name contains VAV, purchase cost greater than 200. Bam, I found 15 types of VAVs, actually components of VAVs that satisfy that condition, or assets that are commissioned in January 2018. Filtered, and I found them. I can use the same filters in the viewer. So I can use that, select the viewer, select the filter, all VAVs costing more than 200, and I see all of those VAVs, 15 of them, right? And I also, to see them more clearly, I change my opacity in my viewer a little bit so they are more distinct, right? And then I investigate individual ones. So, okay, this VAV is VAV1103, and I see its properties, attributes, etc. Right? Or I can navigate through the list, select this VAV1120 and find it in the model. Okay. The same way I can go into my commissioned in January 2018 filter, and it finds me objects that have been commissioned in January 2018. Select this boiler, and I look at these boiler properties and investigate it further. Okay. So in order to ensure that, we suggest definitely having the proper language in your contractual agreements and requirements. We do have a few templates that we can share. They are not Ecodomus specific. So if you having a desire to move into this direction and want to improve your data collection and implementation technologies, we can share this with you. So how do we help? First of all, we obviously explain how to create models that are useful and not just fancy and have a good 2D drawings, but those that have proper data sets. We provide the technology to ensure those data sets are satisfying the conditions. We optimize the work of multiple contractors and subcontractors. So you can extract only the section related to mechanical subs or only to electrical subs and make sure that they are entering the right data. You have the means to exchange to communicate with them about the missing attributes and making sure that they understand what needs to be fixed. And we also provide different ways of data entry. So online app is one way, but you can also provide them with the mobile tools like iPad and smartphones, or you can, even if they say, no way I can do anything except for in Excel, that's doable as well. You can extract the Excel file from the federated database, update that Excel file, and re-import it again. So now let's look at the traditional 2D workflows. Because even though it's not really about BIM, how we typically look at it, right? We still have to deal with the 2D documents and files and understand how to manage it. Fortunately, we have a full electronic document management system built in the Ecodomus, where every file is being tracked with the metadata, and you can customize what kind of metadata is developed. We have the ability to publish files from Revit that synchronizes your navigation in both 2D and 3D in the split screen fashion. So as you navigate in 3D, you see your cursor is moving on to 2D. We have the red line markup capability to mark up your typical PDF, DWGs, DGMs, and attach those markups to issues and manage those issues. We have check-in, check-out, versioning of the documents. Like here's an example of redlining. You drag your document, it's uploaded here. You turn on the editing here, zoom in, select the thickness, colors for your markups. Let's say, let's do it in green, or let's do it in purple or pink. All right, so, and then we can create an issue and it will be tracked as an issue. Or we can do the PDF tags. This is not obviously not the something innovative, but it's something that people do like to do. It's, you know, select the PDF file, and then you can place a tag on it and link that tag to either a BIM component or a space from the model or to an issue. And then next time you can jump from here, from the tag to the asset profile page, to the component profile page. Okay. Customizable workflows, we have the business process builder. So you can define an unlimited number of different workflows related to your documents, issues, and inspections. So these are draggable boxes where you define what happens when a document goes from work in progress to the shared state, or from shared state to published, or from published to archived, which is a typical PAS 1192 workflow. But you can customize it any way you like. You can also define auto naming. So as the files are being uploaded into this folder, you can define by folder what are the appropriate name will be based on the metadata, based on the auto name template fields. You can also use this for not just for 2D issues management, but also for the 3D issues management. And 3D issues management can be used for the vectorized information that you publish from the 3D BIM, or you can use it for the point clouds. We support file formats like LAS, E57, IPTX, PTS. So what you see here is the point cloud loaded. And for both of them, you can create issues and track this. Like, give you an example of how you can create issues. Let's say you navigate here in your model, select this fan. You can see the fan properties if needed, but in this case, I just want to assign something to the fan. So by the way, you see the fan is selected, the space is selected. So I'm saying fan is not working. It worked in the morning, then bang, and it stopped working. And I can assign a priority and assign the person who needs to work on it, and I've just created an issue, right? The good thing here is, first of all, the issue is linked to this object, and second is I can take a snapshot. It takes it automatically. I can mark up this snapshot, right? And I can attach that snapshot now to this issue. I can add a comment, because that's what one of the standards that I will just mention requires. So now you see you have the issue, marked up issue, markup, and the issue. Then what you can do is you can select a bunch of issues and export them as BCF file. For those of you who don't know, BCF stands for BIM Collaboration Format. You see it generated my BCF file. And BCF is supported by other applications like Navisworks, Calibri, and a few others. So you can exchange your issues with the other applications. Now let's talk about integrations. That's the complex slide. I understand it's a lot of here, but I want to explain it. A lot of attempts have been in the past about integrating something with something else, like Maximo with Johnson Controls, or Procore with BIM, or Tririga with Revit, etc. We looked at it a bit, we looked at it slightly from a different angle. We looked at the BIM as the lowest common denominator. You guys know from the math, it's something that is relevant to everything, right? To all of the ratios. Because BIM is so detailed, it now enabled to become this schema for integrating of the technologies that in the past had to be point-to-point integration, right? So we take the data, let's say, from the geometry authoring applications. People call it BIM application. I don't like to call it because they don't really do anything with information modeling. They primarily do geometry modeling. We take that data, geometry data, collect it, integrate it with the other sources of data, let's say with project management tools or SCMMS CAFM tools, or with the sensors from the SCADA or BAS, electronic document management systems, ERP systems. Increasingly, recently we see a lot of potential integrations started happening with other technologies, new technologies like drones. So we're doing right now a pilot project with the indoor navigation drone based on the BIM, and we're doing the space mapping, etc. We are now doing vibration sensor integration, CCTV, video streaming, augmented reality. Everybody's asking us about AI, even though nobody's going to do it, but everybody has to ask. Predictive maintenance, etc. So there are so many new opportunities here that the head is spinning, but it's doable. My personal feeling is that technology is now far ahead of what humans can absorb. So I would suggest we look carefully first in terms of what we want to implement versus what is doable, because everything is doable now, guys. Everything. It's just need to be careful. When I'm asked about some advanced utilizations, advanced integration, I say, first, try to learn how to name your assets properly and how to store your files correctly. And then let's talk about artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence will not do it for you. So here's an example of the integrations we're doing at Opera House right now. This is we did integrations with the asset register, with the work order management system, with the engineering drawing system, with the custom database of rooms and doors. We use the Revit models. There's integration with content management system, and now doing the integration with Honeywell. Just an example. What we like, what we don't like about integrations with other applications. We like integrating using the APIs, especially API of the other package. We have our own API, which is REST-based. We don't like integrations using the files, especially using the plugins that, like, for example, the popular free Kobe toolkit for Revit. It's nothing bad about it. It's just not the best technology for doing it, because it's a one-way upload of data, and usually the model rarely is in good state or condition to be extracting data anyway. We typically, when we do the integrations, we do data field mapping, we do bidirectional integrations all the time. We can embed links that are opening our application in the viewer straight away. Let's say you are in Maxima at the profile page of air conditioning unit 1. So you click on the page and it takes you straight into the AC1 viewer within Economos. Right? Here's another example of integration with Primavera Unifier. It's a project management toolkit as well as the facility management toolkit. So let's say you have your Revit model here. Revit has our BIM connector plugin, which helps you to select the data from the model, which data you want to extract. Obviously, you don't want to, let's say, extract annotations, right? So you select what assets you want to extract and send them from Revit into Economos database. You publish the 3D geometry from here into Economos, right? And now you have the virtual copy inside of Economos. From here on, you can publish it downstream to the other applications. Right, here's your AC unit. These are the properties. And now we are in Unifier. So we can populate Unifier assets using this integration. Or we can also exchange data with Unifier project controls. Unifier also deals with both projects and the facilities, right? So we can exchange the submittals, and we can build the asset register within Unifier as the submittal register is based on the BIM types. So each time a subcontractor uploads a document inside of the Unifier, we can see that linked automatically to the BIM entity. So when we extract the data, nobody needs to manually associate assets and documents. here we generate a COBie file here, and the submittals are linked to the assets. BIM.js integration, also a popular topic recently. Here's an example of what we did in the past, and I'll show you what we're doing right now. Let's say here we go into the campus. This is the Google building here, right? So we look at the satellite view, see those air conditioning units here, right? Now let's go to that profile page within Ecodomus, right? We see that facility, some basic data, documents related to that facility. Now let's look at that facility in the viewer. And here's the same facility now with BIM. And from here, we can jump into individual location. Let's say we go into the kitchen. And now we navigate here within this kitchen. Okay, so we went from the bird eye view down to the coffee maker view. We also started supporting CityGML because more and more customers talk about the cities. We have a couple of clients that cities, not just individual buildings. So we started supporting CityGML and Indoor GML, which are open standards from the Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC. So here's the campus of the University of Southern California, done in CityGML. As you see, these buildings are just LOD 100 level buildings, just the basic information about it, like total square footage or whatever. But we can, within CityGML, we can define also the floor properties or building properties or individual floor properties. And from here, you can so-called explode the model to navigate into full LOD 500 BIM. By the way, this building that you see, this is the School of Cinematic Arts, our first project ever with the USC 8-9 years ago, which was the picture that you saw on my front page where I was introducing the company. So now let's move quickly to BIM Mobile. We have only 10 minutes left. So a quick screenshots of the iPad application. We have Ecodomus Mobile on iPad. You can scan QR barcodes or use RFID, find assets, review their attributes or edit those attributes. You can have access to your documents. We support also folders and the document views and markups. You can create and manage issues related to some objects, fill out the forms. You can create custom online forms and then use them on an iPad. You can schedule inspections online and use them, fill them out using the forms on an iPad. Here's also a quick video of your navigation within an iPad. Let's say here's the concrete inspection, right? We're going into the same building, and let's say we have some concrete slab in front of the building that has some challenge. All right, so here's that slab, and we create a work order crack in concrete, take a photo, attach the photo to it, and now we're done, right? Similar approach we can use on smartphones. We support Android and iPhone. Here's an airport, and so it's an airport in Saudi Arabia. So I can select an object here, see its properties, change the properties, or create a work order for that. Let's say it hasn't been installed correctly. Okay. Internet of Things, quickly about it. Everybody talks about Internet of Things, but few people define what things they are trying to connect using sensors. Our approach is exactly describing those things, right? That's what BIM is. So every thing in the model is what we collect information about, and then we connect it to the other things, to the other sensors. Here's an example from Switzerland. It's a research institute, NEST-EMPA. So let's say we find some asset here, and I see that asset in my model, but I also have the information for this asset collected over the period of time. So I can review my data points here and build some analysis solution around those data points, compare them. You don't have to have the 3D for that, by the way. You see, the same information is available if you don't have the 3D. You can also link your data to the PNID diagram, so piping and instrumentation diagram. So the BIM and the 2D can be interconnected. The same client, Nest Tampa. Here's the traditional 2D drawing, and I've embedded into this drawing some values from the real-time sensor, or I can link some of the sections of the diagram to the BIM object. So I just jumped from that 2D to the asset profile page. And now I say, show me that asset in 3D, and here's my asset in 3D. Okay. I can also, it's pretty easy to set up these integrations. So let's say you have these BAS data points. So that's pretty much what you do. You select which data points from your connection you want to use for this asset. And now this chiller 5 is linked to the building controls. And then you open the diagram builder. Diagram builder looks like this, like Visio, right? So you can drop some box onto the diagram and say this diagram is linked to that asset. And now your diagram shows this asset embedded. So it's pretty simple. Okay, quickly about laser scanning. We supported, I mentioned earlier, E57 and last. We also worked with Leica supporting the TrueViews. We can tag assets within the TrueView, so you can click on this red dot and it will pull up the values for this asset that you specified. Here's some of the use cases, potential use cases. Let's say you have your work orders, let's say pump, that is making some noise and smelly. So you jump to the pump profile, and then you're saying, well, show me that pump in my viewer. And it will load that TrueView and will find within the TrueView where that pump is located. So you can identify this pump, right, and pull up its properties. And also, in addition to properties, you can see its documents. So all of that information is going to be available to you. Okay, now we go into questions and answers. Again, my contact info, Bill's contact info. You can read more about us in the books. I mentioned one of them already, BIM for Facility Manager. This is a 4-year-old book. This book was published about 3 months ago, BIM Handbook. Most of you know this. So this is the #1 book in the industry. 3 out of 11 case studies are from our projects. So Howard Hughes, Stanford, and Medina Airport are covered right here. Now let's look at what we have in terms of the questions. Can vendors upload bill of materials and parts 3D data into the model BIM data? Yes, so we can upload any kind of attribute into the model. Its types of properties are extendable and it's customizable. So you can use, let's say, cost data or schedule data. This can be all assigned to an object. So for digital twin, did they use 3D scanning? Actually, they did. They had the laser scanning I think was gifted to them by either Leica or somebody else, because they are considered as the UNESCO heritage or something like that. So they got laser scanning for free. Well, that's, again, I'm not 100% sure, but they did use laser scanning to verify the model. Okay. Well, digital integrate with existing BMS, or is it a separate package? I was showing you today Ecodomus. We can call this digital twin, or we can call it any way you like. It is integrated with BMS, but our software is our software, so it's a separate package. Are we using digital signature? Not sure what digital signature is. There are definitions of signatures related to, let's say, in-building navigation kind of environments like kiosks, etc. You can build an object that is not a traditional, let's say, model object in Revit and insert it into our environment. Let's say, again, these kiosks or video cameras. People usually don't model them, but they can be incorporated within the viewer and they can be associated with the attributes. Is the data feed into Economus dynamic? It depends on the integration. So some integrations are dynamic, some of them are batch mode, right? So you can specify, let's say, this data every 5 minutes needs to be updated. This data should be updated every once a day, right? So that's, and some of the building controls are every 30 seconds, right? LOD, what is the level of development of the models in Economus? Whatever model you import is going to be presented. Like, so if you import LOD 100 model, you will see the LOD 100 model. If you LOD like 500, it will be LOD 500. Rough order of magnitude cost. So we have some, our software has a standard retail price. We can share with you our price list by email. Most of the implementations are slightly different from one project to another, so we need to look at the scope of work, like what do we integrate with, whether it's just the default functionality that we have off the shelf, or you need to do something additional to what we already have, what kind of training, number of users. So that's all the factor when we develop the pricing. When using 3D scans with Economus, can you use the point cloud similar to a Revit generated 3D model? When we import 3D scans, we pretty much show 3D scans. We can merge that model with the Revit produced model in the same window, but usually the results look ugly because you overlay too much and it's difficult to see the scan. Or we can use the split screen. You know, in one window you show this 3D scan, and next to it you show the Revit produced model. So I find it a bit more interesting. Best intervention point for digital twins: design or ownership. When do we need to start? My suggestion is that start at any point in time, because you can do it even for the building that is 50 years old. I showed you a couple of examples. Or you can, obviously, if you start for a new building, you have more opportunities to do it cheaper than if you do it for the older building, when you need to pull up all of the old drawings and old documents and find it, which is, sometimes is not available, right? Is it only compatible with Revit? No, I mean, we support IFCs. We did projects with Bentley, with Tekla. So it's just Revit has so far the best API, and it's used by 90% of the projects. But we also worked with PDMS, for example. We support Navisworks integration. So what else says here? Naming and layering conventions and version control are all defined by industry or others in Economus. It's defined by the users because we are present in so many different countries, and every country has its own, obviously, standards. Like say DIN in Germany or PAS 1192 in the UK, and nothing else in most of the Asian countries. So it's defined by the users. It can be reused from project to project, obviously. Is it federated model you bring to Economus, or each model separately? We can publish models for each of the individual building and then merge them within Economus, or we can merge them first and then bring the federated model. Let me see what else is here. We developed our first. Share your thoughts. Let me see what else here. Connectors. Are there connectors with third-party CMMS part of the license, or is it service-based? With some of the applications, we already have developed integrations, so it's easier. Let's say with Famous or Maximo or with the Corrigo, we've done 1 or 2 or more integrations, so it's easy to reuse. So it's cheaper than building something from scratch for something we never touched before. Are there integrations with Solibri possible? Yes, using BCF, because both Solibri and Economus support BCF. Are there any ability to drop objects, say, from a catalog into the scene? That's something I actually just defined a few minutes ago. We can add extra objects that are not modeled, typically, let's say, sensors or video cameras or something else, and then they will appear in the viewer within Economus, but even though they are not present in the original model. I think we run out of time, so I appreciate you all, guys. We are available for your additional questions, and I'm stopping recording.